Good evening. My name is Joe Sam Robinson. It's my pleasure to have with us tonight Mr. Harry Gross, who is the Chief of Research at the Georgia Neurosurgical Institute. Well, welcome, Harry. We've had occasion to talk about a number of things. And I would have to say you come from the sort of Democratic viewpoint, and maybe
Sort of.
I'm slightly more to the right, I would say. And we've talked some about the conditions of the country, the events that are taking place, the tensions that are there. We had a recent discussion about some of the facts leading up to the Civil War. The tensions are there, and there are different viewpoints in many different, I guess, parts of the land about what to do and what not to do. And as you mentioned, Harry, surprisingly, that you're as young as you are, you're now a trustee of the University of the South.
I am.
And so
yes.
you have some patriotic view, I think, of academics. And I guess I could say, am a trustee of Mercer. And and we've each have our responsibilities. And the relationship between the universities and the national government is important, and many and out of that, I think many good things have happened, and the resources, the academic resources, have played a major role in making the country what it is. And I would say, as time has gone on, the tensions between different viewpoints are becoming more evident, and the idea that the universities or many of them, have gone so far to the left that they represent a danger to you could say, the Constitution, American freedoms. I mean, that would be a viewpoint. Is that whereas traditionally they've been important bastions of whatever we want to call our national culture. They've all kinds of good things emanate from universities. Issues on justice, issues on just understanding the world, making the place better, maintaining the standard of living, and also navigating in a post-war world. So in the past, I don't think that relationship was particularly disturbed until recently. And one of the things I think of the consequence is that President Trump seeing I think this would be at least one opinion, seeing the universities as a threat to his viewpoints or establishing his viewpoints, has attacked them in many ways. Some of it is being provoked by the idea that the universities are anti-Semitic, even though I'd say one could say that particularly elite universities have extraordinary numbers of Jewish faculty members and students, very high percentage of Jewish students. I think it could be said in the past that there was an exclusion of Jewish students and professors for a long while, and particularly at Harvard, as far as that goes. And there were quota systems, different, I think, ways that prejudice was present. But I don't think, as far as I know, that there's any particular indigenous anti-Semitism located in elite universities. But what's happened recently is people have, I guess, or some people have established the idea that the events in the Middle East with Palestine and Israel, that the difficulties there, that the Israeli community is injuring people, and that the American Jewish people walking around in some ways are responsible for it, and thus should be called to account, vigorously so. And the process has been, I guess, expedited by the large number of Islamic people that are in universities, Palestinian people, Islamic people, along with many other. That's not just them alone, but so these events have taken place in universities, and now I'll then talk a little bit about Harvard. And so what's happened is, particularly at Harvard, there's the idea that I could modestly say that's the apogee of the American university system, rightly or wrongly. I think it's perceived as that. And these numerous efforts have been undertaken to injure this, you could say, the fountainhead of American education. So that's a big issue that's going on here. And now we maybe can discuss a little bit with particular attention to the events in Cambridge. And since I'm a graduate of Harvard, as you may know, I don't know if you can sense that, but I hope not. But in any event, let's talk about that a little bit. And I will say one of the things that have been going on at universities since my day, graduating there 50 years ago, they've gotten a lot more to the left. And I think it's fair to say the neutrality of those universities is not what it was in my day. So I think it's fair to say they do, the door is open, particularly for leftist opinions. And for rightly or wrongly, that's the case. And I think they're in error on that. That's my thought about it. I think the University of Chicago has a pretty good plan about no safe spaces. You can say what you wish, and you can be defeated by rational arguments, and that's what the university is there for, to be a sounding board for different viewpoints, and not to espouse any particular viewpoint. So that's at least the idea that things should be that way. Well, I think one story I will tell about Harvard is the oldest corporation in the country is the Harvard Corporation. This was founded in 1650. 1650, and this has been a self-perpetuating corporation, and they're the people that run the place. And for how many centuries has that been? Particularly one Congregationalist minister would be, say, 1860 or something, would die, and his acolyte, another minister, would take his place. So very, very conservative, very religious, and perpetuating one after the other until recently. And they were pretty much Protestant males from New England, and they set the tone of the place. And so one of the things that happened was in the 1960s, the tension with why should we do this? Why should we let these people more or less run the place? Their major responsibility was to put the Harvard president in there. They were sort of that's another word we'll discuss later, but they were overseeing the whole place. They were kind of trying to make sure that the principles of the place were being preserved, which were rather elevated and appropriate, in my opinion. And so then the corporation changed, and they decided, very humanistic, people with high moral standing, said this is not appropriate for us to continue doing this for the past several hundred centuries. We need to find a way to open this up. They also had lifetime appointments. We'll rejig things every 7 years. We'll find a way to get other candidates in there. So the Harvard Corporation has enormously changed. And the head of the Harvard Corporation is the sister of the governor of Illinois, who is a potential Democratic candidate for the presidency, possibly. The Pulitzers, I get that right. Maybe that's I think they're Pritzkers, and I get it, Pritzkers. Yeah. It's close. But that's the head of the place, and if you look at the people on firstly, the size is expanded, I think, from 7 to 12. All kinds of people are on there now that you could say were substantially to the left. So we have this issue going on, and one of the things about the dogma of Harvard is different. We want a lot of international students here. We're not, and I think this is fair to say, we're not just a national university, but we're a world university. We want people from everywhere. We want to have a world impact. We're very wealthy. They have $52 billion. We have this, and we can afford to do things. And we have an interest in everything in the globe. And if you put all those facts together, we have a situation now where a lot of this is an anathema to President Trump. And he's exercising whatever he can do to stop Harvard's, I guess, viewpoint and to bring them to heel. That's very. I think I'm quite worried about that. I think it's not a good policy. Are there things that could be done to make things better? Well, the Harvard community has some responsibility in that, and I believe they're attempting to do something about it. But I would say, if you to have a more balanced institution, the way to start is with the board of Harvard Corporation, who I would say, just looking at them, would not really. They have a world viewpoint, and they have some national responsibilities, and they're a centerpiece of American education. It really needs a more balanced group of people. And from that, many things flow, many different viewpoints, as witnessed by, I think, the idea of the famous hearing in which the president of Harvard, I think was it Dr. Gay, so it was a female, but she was not. She was quite insensitive, I guess would be the word, to the plight of Jewish students, and for that reason lost her job. All these events are taking place. It's a big revolution. And it's a really difficult situation. What about Swanee? What are your viewpoints on this? Do we have any queries about the conditions in Cambridge?
I mean, I have a lot to respond to. First, I think this is Harvard. You're absolutely right that Harvard is the target because it's the apogee of American higher education. It is the symbol of elite universities. This is prison rules. This is the Trump administration going up to the biggest, baddest guy on the block and trying to deck him to show that he's the biggest, baddest guy on the block. He's picking a fight purposely, because if he can get Harvard to bow down, nobody else is going to resist. Harvard has the largest endowment of any university in the country. If anybody can resist the federal government, it's Harvard.
Yes.
And this is not the first time the federal government has targeted universities. 1960s, I mean, that was the era of crackdown on college campuses, where college campuses were decried as bastions of Marxism and communism, that there were pro-Viet Cong protesters, for the Vietnam War. You had students shot and killed at Jacksonville State, at Kent State. You had, this clear clash of culture on campus, where Nixon himself was saying the professors are the enemy, a statement echoed publicly by J.D. Vance. There are legitimate issues with higher education. There are, as an alum of Harvard, you're perfectly entitled to your opinion that they're too far left. I would argue that the country has moved further right in many ways. Universities are further left than the rest of the country for very important reasons, largely because higher education tends to be more liberal mindsets by virtue of just being exposed to more opinions. The psychology of people who tend to get involved in higher ed tends to be more left-leaning. And there's a self-selection process with academics themselves as well, where right-leaning academics typically don't end up staying in higher ed. They end up going and working for people like Heritage or Cato. They get involved in politics, or they go into the market at that point to go into private enterprise. So there's a self-selection process going on with all of this. This is probably the most capitalist thing you'll ever hear me say. This is where the marketplace of ideas really is going to shine. For Harvard, if Harvard's too far left, people who don't want those viewpoints aren't going to go to Harvard, right? they'll go somewhere else. They'll go to the University of Chicago. They'll go to Liberty University. They'll go wherever. If you can afford a Harvard education, or you fit in that small demographic that's going to get a lot of financial aid from them, and that's the view you want, great, go for it. You're going to find somewhere else, because there's going to be a college that will cater to your ideological desires at that point. The purpose of higher ed, and I say this as a trustee of Sewanee, but also as a professor, the purpose of higher ed is to try and explain the world around you to students in a way that shapes them to be prepared for the challenges that are going to come with being part of the elite. Higher education is what shapes the elite in this country, what always has. There's only about 40% of the country that has a bachelor's degree. If you look at the United States government, only 3% of both the House and the Senate do not have a bachelor's degree.
Yes.
Right? 14% of Americans have a tertiary degree, right? So a JD, an MD, a master's degree, and that stuff. 90% of the House and Senate have a master's degree or higher. This is what shapes, that's also why these fights over higher ed are so important to ideological movements like Trumpism. Because if you can take over higher ed, if you can shape, like the demands that the Trump administration sent to Harvard back in April amounted to nothing less than total control over who teaches and what they teach, who goes there and whatnot, right? If you can take control of that, you get to shape the elite of this country, and not just of this country, but of other countries, right? You mentioned international students. There have always been international students at Harvard, because it's been the apogee, right, of American, influence, right? If you were an American client in the 1800s and the 1900s, you best believe the children of your elite were going to go to an elite American university, right? You have the children of, dictators going to these universities, right? Because that's the relationship. One of the things the Trump administration has really cracked down on lately has been Chinese students. That is ending an over a century-long relationship. After the aftermath of the Boxer Rebellion in 1899, the Qing dynasty was required to pay reparations to all of the countries whose embassies and people had been damaged, in which the United States was one. The United States was the only country to decline monetary reparations, instead basically saying that the money the Qing dynasty would be paying to the United States government would instead be turned into scholarships for Chinese students to come study in the United States. It's one of the reasons why there was such a close relationship until 1949 between the United States and China. And we can decry whether the student body makeups of our universities are the national character we want them to be. But what they are undeniably are engines of American power, of shaping the next generation, not just of this country's elites, but of other countries' elites, right? If 27% of your student body are international students, which is what Harvard is, right? Some of those people are gonna stay in the United States, right? They're gonna stay and they're gonna work and they're gonna bring talent and they're gonna use that Harvard education to bring something of value, right? And that makes us better, makes us stronger, makes us more powerful. Those that leave, if they go back to their home countries, right? One, they have the ability to improve their own home countries, but they're also taking the values that they got from a Harvard education with them, right? And that's gonna shape the elite that they join at that point. It's gonna make it easier to have closer ties between these countries, right? For Sewanee, I'm not sure what percentage of our student body is international, but I know that within my class, I graduated with at least 15, 20 international students out of about 400. And every one of those students earned their place at the table. One, this was not some DEI thing or whatever. They were incredibly brilliant, many of them coming from the elites of their home countries. Right. Most of them stayed in the United States, and the ones that didn't have gone back and are doing incredible work in their home countries. That's the purpose, I think, of bringing in these larger spaces, of bringing in, dare I say, a more diverse student body, is that it creates a more, I think, well-rounded student experience. And that as a student, as an alum, as a trustee, right, we have responsibilities in each of those roles, and we have viewpoints and opinions that can totally differ on how best to achieve those goals. But for the federal government to come in and start saying, hey, I get to decide what you teach, who you teach, and who's teaching them, is going to destroy the intellectual capital and the intellectual power that has made the United States a world superpower. Because that's going to be the death of innovation. It's going to be the death of independent learning.
Well, those are good points, and we've talked some about President Trump's viewpoints, and he certainly is not timid about exercising presidential power.
No.
I think that's a fair statement. The courts routinely restrain that.
Yeah.
And so the many things that are underway, many of his policies will take a while, but the courts will rectify that, I think. Additionally, we still are a democracy. There'll be voters, and I don't think that there's going to be a dictatorship from the right emanating from President Trump. I don't think that. There are many reasons that's not going to happen, but I think you appropriately brought up the schism between the universities and government policy in the 1960s, enormous schism. There was, you could say, something like close to a civil war. One anecdotal comment was when I was a medical student at the University of Virginia, the governor brought in he mobilized the state troopers and sent them in to arrest we reread the Riot Act, the Virginia State Riot Act, and he basically declared martial law at the University of Virginia, and they had it was quite an event. They had big trucks, and they were, anyone that was walking around on the grounds, they were arrested and thrown in the moving vans. Little old ladies were tossed in there. The response was a huge strike. The whole place blew up, and it didn't work, to put it mildly. Yeah. It did not work. And so what Trump is, it was a national issue that just did not work. It didn't. And so what President Trump is doing is he's doing a lot of policies out there. But I like your analogy of possibly you've considered this, Harry. If you were put in prison, the first thing to do would be to beat up the head inmate. That'd be your first mission. Maybe you could mentally overwhelming, but hopefully.
Even if you fail, at least it shows that you've.
Yeah, right.
You're there to try.
Right. So in any event, he attempted to do that, and just one issue after the next. And actually, one of the things that this is gaining some traction for President Trump is an attack on elitism. And so if you go through his whole policy ideas, he's sort of like Joe Sixpack, if you can use that as.
The man with a golden toilet.
From another. Those are my people, whatever. And so I'm going to take the Harvard money and send it to community colleges or trade schools. Well, certainly that resonates pretty well.
Except he's not doing that.
Oh, that's true. The other point is what actually is the nature of this money? This is not money. They don't send a big check in. Here's for your caviar and in the student dining hall. We can make sure everyone gets caviar. And
here's the common room's customary bottle of champagne.
What kind of wine do we just throw this swill out with the students? I want only the very best. No, this is for cancer research.
Yeah.
So the money that's out there, if you actually see where it's going, it's for policies that no one would object to, I think, and I think one can go back to the COVID arrangement here, where the research funded by the government hooked up with private drug companies, and they produced this enormous breakthrough that in many vaccinations, and you could say it saved the world. Yeah. You could say that. You could also say that in the World War II or whatever war you want to talk about, the intellectual capital of the country prevailed for the glory of our species. Yeah. The bad guys were defeated. Los Alamos was there. The academics were brought forth, and the
academics from many countries. I think
that's
worth
correct.
pointing
That's
out, right? I mean, the
right.
Manhattan Project was multinational.
I'll make that point too. one of the things going on now is the nation state versus the world. And I think the world, our citizens, will be served by appropriate international relationships. Standard of living will be better, evil will be less, and there'll be some hiccups along the road, and there'll be some tensions. So these guys are bad guys, and we get into the psychological thing about the in group or the out group. So this is the in group, well, okay, and everybody else is an out group. We're going to try and injure everyone else. We're being ripped off. So that particular viewpoint, I think, plays into what's going on here. And defenders of the Trump policy could say that's basically the idea, is that this establishment or this pseudo-establishment is injuring the real Americans, the real Joe Six, the real people are being injured, and their money is being taken from them and sent to these plutocrats that are, in a way, despise them. So the idea is, well, people in the elites, of academic elites, really dislike the people that are, I don't know, drinking beer and eating hot dogs or whatever they are up to. So I think this is part of that policy. And just to go through it, this is, I can take the point that, all right, I'm gonna do something about the perceived elite. I'm Andrew Jackson in the White House. I'm not, which is, you mentioned history. This is not an uncommon story. Well, the real people don't have their place, and I'm going to give it to them. So there can be things that can be done. I mean, I think you could do. You could say, well, we're going to be interested in ethnicity fairness. So we could say you're a Caucasian male and you're the last guy in the room. So the system has been created to injure you, and I'm going to stop that. I'm going to stop the people that have injured you, and you can be my supporters because that's what's going on a little bit. And also overseas, anywhere, what's going on. I mean, it's complicated. But I think that's part of the big, sort of a bigger ideological picture. Now, the way that this is happening is just terrible. I mean, this is not the way to do it. I think the point number one is international students are good. The point is, are we paying for them or not paying for them? What is going on? And I don't like to use the word soft power. I don't like that phrase.
I love the word soft power.
I really dislike that. But if you look at the British Empire, you look at London, you look at Britain, the United Kingdom. They had this enormous impact on the world. 1/4 of the world on a globe was British red. They controlled a quarter of the world. All these enormous things, and then the empire fell apart. But what they've been left with is their academic institutions. So Harvard and Yale, Oxford and Cambridge, I missed that, and the equivalent. They have this tremendous impact. And so all over the world, people strive to go there. When they go there, they get a very, generally a good opinion of Britain. They become supporters of British policies. They buy British cars, et cetera, et cetera.
Or they want to make a relation, like the Hafez al-Assad trying to cozy up to Britain. His dictation sent Bashar to Oxford.
Right.
You know, I mean,
right.
that sense
and
was...
so their influence is academic influence, and it's the universities that are the remnant of this empire. This is once again the top places in the world, and the country should not easily sacrifice that. And do we want the Chinese to have this influence after we've executed Harvard? The University of Beijing? Are they going to replace this? Are people going to learn Chinese? Is the world going to this important U.S. institution is being, I guess, assaulted? Now we're about out of time. Harry, do you have a last comment here?
I mean, the last thing is, as a member of academia, I am full of critiques of academia. I am fully aware of what Swanee would call the town and gown divide. There are a lot of problems with higher ed, but the assault on intellectual freedom and the ability of universities to act independently in the best interest of their students in subservience to a politician's ideological agenda, any politician's ideological agenda, liberal, conservative, you name it, is a problem not just for higher ed, but for the United States as a whole and for the world at large. That the consequences of what the Trump administration is doing right now with Harvard and these funding cuts and this assault on higher ed is going to have global shockwaves for decades to come.
All right. Well, thank you, Harry. Once again,
Thank you.
pleasure to have you with us. Thanks.
Always a pleasure to be here.
Yes.